Mic check. We're good? All right, great. I'd like to call this workshop to order, please. Roll call.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Present.
Councilman DeWitt.
Here.
Councilman Slackton.
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Here. All right, great. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Hey.
Public comments at this time. Any public comments on anything at all? Yes, Mark, come right up.
Good morning. My name is Mark Sewin, and I'm the chairman of the Bonita Springs YMCA, whom I represent today. I wanted to comment on item 36 of the strategic plan that was handed out here that states, develop programs in collaboration with local not-for-profits that provide recreational services to maximize the availability of such services to our community and avoid duplication of effort and cost. I think, as most of you know, the Bonita Springs YMCA restarted roughly 3 years ago under the umbrella of the very successful Sky family of YMCAs that includes Inglewood and Fort Myers and Bonita Springs and Venice. The Y is growing, become financially sustainable, and is moving into our own strategic effort to decide what services need to be added to serve the community now that we've got the organization stabilized and going forward. I'm here first to confirm our commitment to collaborate with the city as we move through our process to ensure we together provide the kind of facilities that community wants and needs without duplicating efforts. As chairman of the board and with Pete Shatuk, our executive director of the facility, move forward, we're anxious to work closely with the city. Now, the opportunities we're currently investigating include probably the biggest one on our plate right now is pickleball. As you know, this is one of the fastest growing sports in Florida with a massive championship last week. I don't know if you went down there or not, but I couldn't believe it. They had so many courts. Many communities around here, though, don't have the space for such facilities, or they have concerns about the noise that pinging paddle and ball make. And they don't have space for such facilities, and so we're in the process of considering putting in between 7 to 10 courts at the YMCA. We have the space. We're confirming now the demand and the need, and look forward to possibly moving forward with that this year. Secondly is we're looking at the possibility of expanding our pool. We provide swimming lessons for kids and adults and have done that for many years. But now we've also started up a swim team, and we're looking at if this grows, we may have to add a few lanes to expand our pool in order to be able to have a competitive team. As you may know, if you've been there, we have a pond on the premises and the river nearby that are used for kayaking and canoeing and stand-up paddling. And those are two also very rapidly growing sports down here in this part of the Florida in their own rights. And we're considering, we already do during summer camp lessons on that, but we're looking at expanding that utilizing the pond that we have. We're also considering expanding our fitness track that exists, that goes around that pond, to include some extreme sport activities that are attractive to many of our younger adult folks. I'm too old for that kind of activity, but some of the 20 to 35-year-olds really are looking forward to that, and we're going to have our first example of that and exercise with that here towards the fall of this year. So those are just some of the things that are on the plate, and as we move forward, we're both serving the same community, and so there are going to be things that people want that might be best done with us, might best done cooperative, might best be done by the city. And so we're anxious to work with the city as their planning goes forward, and we look at those activities to see where's the most efficient and effective way to provide this for the community to make this one of the best communities in Southwest Florida. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with public comment? All right. We'll move on to item 4, confirming our mission, our vision, and values. Anybody like to start? Peter, you want to start?
Sure, if that's okay.
Sure.
We've been sending around a lot of paper, lists of lists. I think my notion is maybe this meeting can be somewhat shorter than the last meeting.
That would be good.
Anybody disagree with, don't like that?
I think it
We're
should
in
be.
violent agreement.
Meeting adjourned?
And meeting adjourned. So the notion I had is that we could go through this schedule of items. Don't have to read them all this time because we've all read them. I think there's general consensus on things, but go through topic by topic, see if there are any comments with respect to them. Then what Carl and Ann, met with Carl and Ann yesterday. We had a very good meeting. And the notion was that a good deal, as is obvious, a good deal of these matters on this list are actually staff presentations. So Ann Wright was good enough to break those out, and then we have a separate list of that. We could go through that and order that as best we can for staff's benefit. And then the end game would be, Carl and I took a very quick shot yesterday at summarizing by topic under the implementation plans the major themes of each topic. And that's what the last sheet we handed out was. And the notion there was, first of all, if council agrees, we don't want to be presumptuous, but we just wanted to have a start at that. To go through those as best we can and order those for staff's benefit so that staff would understand what our top priorities are. Not to say that all of it is not important. Carl, is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any thoughts on doing it that way? Amy, Greg? Any?
No, I think it sounds good. Yep. I don't think we need to read all of them
Right.
again.
Okay, good. So, with that, so why don't we just, any comments on the vision? Mission, we went through this last time, but for the sake of good order, I'll just do it this way. Values is what Carl had prepared last time in 2014, so that's picked up from that. Fred?
The only question is on the vision, were any of the suggestions I made and read that were sent get incorporated?
Yeah, what happened was, there's a separate, Carl sent that out separately.
Yeah, right.
So, actually, I don't think any of those were on the vision.
Yeah, he didn't have
Not on the
anything.
vision.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the-
so
on
when we
the
get into the implementation.
steps and things,
Right, when
yeah.
we get into the implementation steps, I have that
Okay,
redlined here.
Sure, okay.
And if I fail to call it out, please correct me, but I've got it separately here, Fred.
Okay,
You
great.
good? Okay. So strategies to achieve the vision, as we said last time, those are derived from the Bonita Comprehensive Plan. Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
So now to implementation steps, and so let me take Fred's comment here in number 3, which was, of course, that very important concept of trying to get the timing right on the light. Fred added in, including a real-time capability of adjusting signal timing. Anything you want to add on that, Fred?
No, but that's the key to the whole thing. that
Okay.
Ability to make adjustments real time based on the traffic sensors pick up.
Okay.
You want to elaborate just a second on that, Fred? For the,
Really?
yeah, seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Small point, but like you say,
right
it's the
now,
key to the whole thing, so
right
let's
now,
talk
we have
about
all
it.
the lights are hooked together, except there's a gap at the railroad, but it's actually 2 loops, but each loop is controlled by a master controller. But they don't, number one, most of them don't have sensors on them. Number 2, even though it's got a master controller with a computer, the computer software doesn't have the ability, even if we had sensors on them, on the traffic lights, to adjust the lights based on what the real traffic is at that hour and day and minute of the day. But they do have that capability. That was confirmed with Ted, help me, Carl, with Trish, yes. And actually, there's some places in Florida where this is being implemented, I think in Orange County. Lee County is supposedly pursuing it. So that would be one way we could make a real measured improvement. And an interesting little point to back this up. In one of the presentations that we were at, one of the, I think it was McMahon, said there was almost the same amount of traffic on Bonita Beach Road in 14 as there was in 15. But yet, the traffic jams is terrible now compared to 14. So, anyway, I think it's a good thing. So, hope you don't want me to elaborate further. I've run out of detail.
Well, no, I think that's important. Any other questions
I just
there?
have a
Yeah,
comment.
yeah.
If we're just looking at this from a transportation point of view,
Right.
I think there's several areas that need to be taken into consideration in regard to our neighbors. I think, we have essentially a failed intersection in the quadrant that we're talking about, but if the Estero recent transportation study is correct, we could debate that at some time, it looks like the Coconut 41 is going to be failing pretty soon. So I think we need to work with that community, and they're also calling for an extension of Coconut via Coconut Point, going past that new medical facility that are doing that. And if you look at some of the studies on the bikes lanes and we're trying to get through points, they're connected on the Estero. And then we already mentioned in this thing something that had to do with Collier County. So if we're going to have a transportation focus, I think we should not forget that it requires us to cooperate and coordinate with our neighbors, or else we're going to fix one problem and we're going to have these other problems come up in not too short a time. So I would like to really work on that together with them. And also to emphasize the pedestrian paths, because with our aging population, I think the EAR study suggested that the largest group is going to be over 75. I don't know how many 75-year-olds are going to be riding bikes, but maybe they are. I think they will probably be walking. So we have to be considerate of that, as much emphasis on that as on the bike paths.
I think those are all great points. Greg, anything you want to add?
No, I think it's good. I guess to me, I think that changing the light, the way that they sequence is going to be the most cost effective, to try that out before we really dump a lot of money into a quadrant study into Beach Road and 41.
Right.
So,
Steve?
I agree with Tommy. I mentioned at the last meeting that, going to California quite often to see my daughter, go to San Francisco, the timing of the lights are very brief. And, there's never really a backup. So, I'm all for the timing.
Right. Mike? Agree. Right. Okay, Fred, anything else you want to add? No. I mean, so it sounds like we're all in agreement on the lights. Okay, fantastic.
I
Go
think
ahead.
we should real
Yeah,
quick
yeah,
just
yeah,
on that.
absolutely.
Like Amy said, I think if we look to the north, we also got to look to the south. Make sure that, because right there at the county line, there's right by Mel's Diners, there's that light there, and further down we're doing
Woodside.
Old 41. So we don't want to cause a problem to the south.
No, absolutely.
Exactly. It has to be a coordinated effort. But I'm not just in favor of, I think I see the lights as being a short-term, not even a solution, but
Correct.
a short-term relief valve, because any kind of long-term solution, which would require putting in a network, so if that's the term, along that quadrant will take, my guess, we couldn't even get one part of it in before 3 years, so maybe longer than that. So we need a short-term relief, and then we have to encourage the development of a long-term solution to the problem. So I'm in favor of the quadrant plan, or pursuing the quadrant plan, and also the Bonita Beach Road visioning and the multimodal. So the whole package is
Right.
what I'd be
Right.
in favor of.
It-
Not just the timing of the lights.
Wouldn't it be nice if it were just the timing of the lights? Wouldn't it be
exactly.
nice if,
Yeah.
poof, we could make that better, but absolutely. Thank you, Amy.
Now, let me mention, I invited Larry Kiker, Commissioner Kiker, down yesterday, and we spent 3 hours together, very good meeting. Talked about various things, what we were progressing collectively, what we had developed consensus on in a very short amount of time. And it included talking about the quadrant study. I did not talk to him, Carl, about the light timing, because you had said you were going to handle that with staff. But Larry was extremely interested. Took a copy of the McMahon report, said he was, Tool is coming down to the second meeting in May. Yeah, Larry's going to come to that meeting to hear Tool's presentation. So I would say at a minimum, extremely cooperative attitude with respect to that and other things that we have collectively talked about. So I thought it was a good meeting. Should we move on?
Sure.
Okay.
Any other comments at the moment? Okay.
So the next is community aesthetics. That starts at 16. So once again, I think we had pretty much developed a consensus last time as we went through this. But any comments? This is on 16 through 26.
The only I have a couple comments. First of all, I'm very much in favor of beautifying the city as best we can, but I think we have to be very concerned about the maintenance costs because being involved with a landscape project in my own community, that becomes even more important than the plants that you put in. So we have to, I think, review what's there so we can get a handle of what has to be done to keep it looking halfway decent.
Right.
Plus, watch the designs that go forward to make sure that what goes in there can be pretty much be left in place with minimum attention, because it'll be a nightmare if we don't do that. The other thing is, I'm very much in favor of trying to develop a signature city entrance feature, and I understand that would be done with FDOT or something we talked about the last time, but I think we need to do that. But we can incorporate it into our landscape plan when we're looking at it. And I don't really have a feeling about screening barrier walls because I personally, I wasn't sensitive to it, but the walls that I see are the ones in the gated communities, and they are landscaped, so they look okay. So I need to take a ride around the community to see where there are things that might be offensive. I assume that we're talking about along the main corridors where they are a problem.
Well, throughout the city city has constructed, and somebody sent an email around, I assume it was Carl in response to
Carl.
somebody's comment, yeah, those walls, and I mean, they are on Beach Road, which is an entrance to the city, but they're pretty much throughout a good part of the city. And it's the discussion we had last time. Is there a cost-efficient way to have greenery on that?
But it's certainly something we could look at
Right.
and things, but I don't have an a priori opinion about that, but we can look at it if we think that that's part of the things that make our community look less attractive than we would want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my view is there's no
okay.
question they make us
Yeah.
look less attractive.
Yeah.
But,
No, I agree with that.
yeah.
I mean, a good case is just look at the sound barriers on I-75. They ain't beautiful. You look like you're in inside a prison going down a road, you know. So anything you can do to dress them up is good.
No, I think the city's done a good job with the ones they did in front of Piva Court and Lostwood Circle with the brick look. You're right, a barren wall looks horrible, and that's why most gated communities dress them up with landscaping. So, but in lieu of the landscaping, I think what they've done with the brick look along East Terry Street from basically Old 41 almost all the way out to Imperial Street, I think is one way to dress them up instead of just having that drab concrete stucco wall.
Okay.
And I would just add on the medians, moving forward, probably master the obvious here, but I think we as a council, if not me in particular, need to pay closer attention to what we do in the medians, and that what is presented to us as before we say yes and stroke the $1 million checks is what actually gets done. Because I don't think this last project, I don't know. Anyway, don't need to elaborate on it, but certain parts of town were overdone, and other parts of town were underdone. And I will continue to stress that, and moving forward, we need to move away from that at all costs. And I'll just, I guess, leave it there.
And I believe one of the presentations is a little more with respect to that at some point. I just make one comment on the point Amy made about the signature entrance. I think there are at least two possible aspects to that. One is FDOT itself has a program of, let's call it signature landscaping, which I believe are large trees that would make a statement. And Jim Worcester, who was here last time, has done some investigation, and I'm sure staff is aware of this, but they also have a program of $100,000 grants FDOT has for that type of thing. But the other notion is one I believe that Peter had, which is perhaps to have something else that is a physical, entrance to the city. I mean, you had, I don't know if you mean lighthouse, but you talked about lighthouse as an example.
Right.
So, you know, so I think there are those, at least those two different things in play, and maybe a third.
I think we talked about last time is involving arts and public places to have them
Right.
help us out
Exactly.
a little bit on that
Exactly.
too.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Are there any, Carl, that you know or anybody knows of putting anything on 75? Are there any limitations to putting a lighthouse or a starfish or a seahorse or a whatever,
Starfish?
something, whatever? You never know what that art in
We're
public
not gonna
places
let-
might come up
we're
with
not
there, right?
letting you choose it.
No.
Hey, you never know.
An ocean wave?
I don't know any particular restrictions, but I'm sure there are.
Hmm.
And we would, and in preparation for the placement of any type of thing like this, because I'm sure you're talking about something extremely large, that you
Maybe,
would.
maybe not, I don't know.
You would have to be working with FDOT on that. The city of St. Petersburg, on I-275, has a huge monolithic type entrance feature. And by huge, I mean it's got to be 35 feet in the air. But yet that's along an interstate. So I'm sure there's a way to get there.
Right, right. Very good.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
No,
sorry. Yeah,
what-
go ahead.
anything
if you-
else you
Yeah,
wanna-
no, I'm good on that point. This
right.
is, but if I'm the only one that thinks maybe that's a good idea, I mean, now's
Oh, I would-
as
I
good
would-
a
I think
time
it's a
as
great
any
idea
to.
because we talked about even
Yeah,
talking,
yeah, yeah.
partner with
Sure,
BSU
yeah,
on
yeah,
I-75
exactly.
to do that tower.
Right.
Great. Just making sure we're
Yeah.
kind of simple. Steve, all right with you? Yeah?
Yeah.
Mike? Fred? All right, Fred. All right, great. Thanks, Pete.
Okay, good. Fred, I'm sorry I missed a few of your points on the previous topic. I think they've pretty much been covered, but I'll go through them for the sake of completeness here. You actually had a point similar to Amy on walkways as well as bikeways, specifically with respect to the school district. And actually working with Estero as well on yours. Parks and public access, we're up to,
27.
thank you. We're up to 27 through 37. Any comments?
I just think I'm definitely in favor of working on enhanced beach access, and I know we received an email from the beach people, as I call them. So, I mean, I think we need to work on that in a strategic way to try to develop something above the pressure point there. I'm also interested in developing that parking vision that Toll had presented. Again, just a suggestion. So there are lots of ideas that can be developed along there. I also think that we should try to focus on connectivity between the parks. We have some unbelievable parks, and if we can just get them going from one to the other, I think that would be very positive. And then to pursue water access not only on the beach, but I know we had a study to do that, and it seemed like we had very limited opportunities, but I don't want to give up on that unless we can still do that.
And is there part of, help me out here, that the county owns as you're heading north, you know, south of Dog Beach?
Yeah, they own
and-
half
and-
of Big Hickory.
And what maybe is their intent, or what?
I actually chatted a little bit with Commissioner Kiker about that yesterday, just raised a topic.
Right.
I mean, this is not something like we're going to do tomorrow.
Right.
Also talked to him about the joint Lee Collier lot, seemed interested in thinking about that as well.
Great.
Actually, if you look, you can find almost like a 2020 presentation. There is a presentation online by Lee County about that Big Hickory parcel. And way back, there was talk about a beach park there. It didn't go anywhere. Didn't go anywhere. Among other things, well, it's unclear from reading it why it didn't go anywhere. But I think that's basically where it is. The southern part, my recollection, is privately owned. The part nearer to Little Hickory Island. And then, of course, there's the Pelican Landing
Right.
on that peninsula there.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to look into Big Hickory for
Right.
more beach access. You know, you watch the Weather Channel, they don't call us Bonita Springs, they call us Bonita Beach. And everybody comes here for the beach, so
Right.
we need more beach.
And more access. And
Well, yeah.
We probably have enough
Yeah, the beach is there,
can't
we just
get
gotta be
to
able to get to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
The Weather Channel calls us Bonita Beach?
Yep.
All right, good to know.
Peter, do you want to take public comment throughout on, I don't know if anyone had any comments? Anybody? Yeah.
Is that all right, Amy?
Sure. Give them 2 minutes. No.
Sure. Any public comment at this point? Yeah, sure. Marty, come on up. You're not a shy guy, Marty. Come right up here. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Great.
Thank you for doing this. This is excellent for the city. We need to get things organized and get things corrected and going in the right direction. And even though we all live on the beach and I understand it's a problem, we feel there are solutions. And starting with Big Hickory Island and Lover's Key and those areas, if there was a way that you could make those accessible to people, once the beach is accessible, then you can figure out how to get to transportation there. And whether it be parking or whether it be shuttles or whatever it might be. But everybody seems to be, in the past, trying to shove everything on our little island down there, and we don't have space for it. And so people started parking all over the roads, and they started parking in driveways and empty lots, and it became a nightmare. In season, now I'm out of season, obviously things change. But in season, it became a nightmare for us. And so I think that anything the city can do and anything the county can do together in order to involve Big Hickory Island and Lover's Key will be a tremendous help for us, and it'll give much more access to everybody to the beach.
Right.
So anything you can do with them, we're 100% behind you.
Great, great. Thanks, Marty. Yes, please. Come on up. Public comment.
Sure.
All right.
Vicki Olson. I live in Murano at the Colony on Coconut Road, and I've been involved with a group called the Coconut Road West Neighborhood Coalition for some time. Speaking of access to the beach, there is a huge amount of concern in our part of the world that the public access to Estero Bay on the western end of Coconut Road be preserved for the public and for that kind of use. And I'm very encouraged to see that you're emphasizing that in your strategies and working in that direction. There'll be a lot of support in that part of the world up there for doing that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else at the moment? Yes, sir.
Morning, everybody. John West, Bonita Springs. At the first meeting of the council, I mentioned that there was supposed to be a Parks and Recs committee formed according to the comprehensive plan, and that has never been implemented, and I think it should be. Regarding the beach. Everybody wants to go to the beach, and there's nothing much to attract people elsewhere. And I think consideration should be given, for example, to have a bike track in the DRGR area. We could use that for people to cycle there. At the moment, there isn't one except at Lover's Key, and that's a heck of a long way for people to go. So I think an aqua facility maybe and a bike track might keep some of the people from wanting to go to the beach. And you never know. But it's possible that maybe a survey of the citizens might uncover some desire for that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Christine Ross, Bonita Chamber. I wanted to follow on that theme. We've had a lot of talk around our board table about creating a park, sort of like Collier County has, where you might have 4 or 5 soccer fields, some baseball fields, a couple of football fields, and if you could envision right on the edges of the DRGR so that you could connect from the Y, maybe up Tower Road, and just use that as a facility for recreation, it would be a great way to get people onto those properties. And there's really nowhere between Collier and I think it's Fort Myers, maybe at Likes Park, for people to play. And so when I see the soccer fields are all the time full underneath the power lines right next to 75, and then also at the YMCA. So I would encourage you all, with the growth of the city and kids needing more things to do, to think about that possibility. Thanks.
Christine, what is the example you gave?
So Collier Regional Park, right down on Imperial, when you pull in there, they have a lot of baseball fields, softball fields, soccer fields, and it's both for adult and kids. You know, we really don't have a lot of that here, and with the interest in soccer, it keeps kids focused in a good path, and with our Bonita Prep, the school and all of that, I just think if we could create that kind of a resource and then maybe have the bike path on the perimeter of it, I always thought that would be an amazing addition to, if the high school was going to be out there, to have that be sort of the expanded edge of it. So if you go down there and check that out, I think you'll find it's really, really nice.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comments at the moment? Okay. Pete?
So are we good on parks and public access?
Real quick on the parks and public access. Carl, in the past, right before you go over New Pass, and actually right before you went over Big Carlos, those areas used to be accessible. You could go there and jet ski back. It's called back in the day. We used to take jet skis there, and you could do it. The county, I guess, had put up fences there. Is there any way that we can talk to them about removing those to get some of those accesses back more quickly?
I'll let Nicole come up with that. That's okay.
We have been in negotiations with them in regards to New Pass and near Dog Beach because the previous council wanted us to look into building a park there, which would give access at those areas in terms of canoe kayak launching. It could be, you know, small boats or jet skis. That's something we could talk to them about. So they do know our plans in that aspect, but that is something, you know, we're looking for direction from this council if that's what you would like us to continue to pursue. Okay. So, I mean, that is a possibility that we can work on.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any kind of accessibility, I don't think we can be choosy. Wherever we get the opportunity, I think we have to try it. We only have 2 or 3 possibilities if that study that we had is correct, so.
Yeah, and there's plenty of room in that area because, I mean, let's go back 20 years ago. The entrance to Lover's Key used to be right where Dog Park is. That's where the parking lot used to be for Lover's Key. State Park was right there. Instead of moving it, well, it would be to the north towards Fort Myers Beach. They've moved it in the last 15 years. So there's plenty of parking. It was a parking area at one time, and then actually there's a trail going back to Lover's Key State Park at that point. So that used to be the entrance, and you take the tram. So in that area, then on the other side of New Pass, like I said, mid-'80s and '90s, you could go down there and sit at the beach, take your jet skis there, and hang out. But then they put up the fence and everything, so you can't do that anymore.
Great. Good feedback. Thank you.
So we're on to Small Town Charm.
Did we do 38 through 41?
I'm sorry, what did I do? Oh, other. I missed the other.
The dreaded other
The dreaded
category.
other. 30.
Other.
Sorry, 38 through 41?
41, is that something that we have a say in, or is that the county?
Well, it's a county building, but I did say to Commissioner Kaki yesterday, obviously we should be talking about that building, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
so to open up that conversation.
Yeah,
Did he express what
He's
the
willing to
county's thoughts are on what they're going to do with it?
I didn't get into a lot of detail, but he sure is willing to chat about stuff.
Because I know I'm
yeah.
assuming they're paying rent at Springs Plaza and then community policing. I mean, that would be a great little area for a community policing station.
Huh, yeah.
We talked about that. Yeah.
Well, perhaps we should come up with our collective ideas of what we think, right?
Yeah,
And then-
exactly. I
and then
think the
approach them.
council should brainstorm about what possibilities are
Yeah.
there and then rank what we think would be good and then come with a proposal. That usually a proposal is better than saying, what can
What
we
do
do
you
with?
think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah. yeah.
My memory serves me right, Carl, you've been in discussion about this issue a while back.
It was part of the negotiation for the library going downtown. The county was not really interested in including that part of it in that negotiations. So I don't think they really know what they want at this point in time, but I think they're open to ideas from the city. We may have to pay for it, you know, if we want that building, maybe not. It'll all depend on the discussions with the county.
And we don't know where Mike Scott sits with that either, do we?
About,
About that building being used for the sheriff?
oh, no, you're talking
old
about the
library.
substation. You're not talking about Delta District, right?
I'm talking about the library, right?
Yeah, library, but maybe right
Yeah,
now
just hypothetically.
But right now they have an office in Springs Plaza. My thought would be to move them out of that office.
Well, they've signed a 5-year lease. That's the latest information we have from the sheriff's office. So they're going to be in Springs Plaza for a while.
Okay.
So, and I suspect we'll have to talk about this as well, but direction previously has been, we still want to, maybe not in its exact location, but the downtown substation, I think we still want a presence of the sheriff's department downtown somewhere. But again, that we'll have to get that reconfirmed with council, because at some point in time, they'll be moving out of that building. So,
Yeah, and it's also, sorry, Greg.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's also, you know, situated at the gateway to our beautiful recreational area there, so, you know.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Like Amy just talked about doing a brainstorming, but I think during this brainstorm, I think we ought to include Nicole, since that is
Right.
part of that whole Parks and Recs. We've got the skate park, we've got the rec center, we've got the ball fields, and the pool down there. So I think whatever goes there should be something to do with the Parks and Recs or the community itself.
well, I mean, it can be a domino effect on this. I mean, once
Right.
you start thinking about moving, for example, functional areas of the city around, for example, if you were talking about moving neighborhood services out of the Lyles into the library on Pine, if you were to consider that, then you may have an opportunity for some of the things that has been talked about previously, providing space for small tech companies to get together, incubators. I mean, there's all kinds of things city-wise as well as partnering with the private sector to do as well.
So that's on our workshop list, maybe high on it, huh?
Well, I think when we get to the downtown area, I suggested that we have like a total overview of that development, including these kinds of things that sort of overlap the other categories, like this one. Park would overlap with some other things. And these other things like the affordable housing, I think that's best utilized when we get to the downtown thing, discussion.
I'd say one thing about affordable housing, there's been some really interesting articles in the Naples paper about affordable housing, or actually assistance to people with respect, in need with respect to housing in that area. So I think speaking for myself, I have a lot to learn about this, and I think it would be good to get a complete overview of the various aspects of it, whether it's by place, whether it's by subsidy, et cetera. It just strikes me there's a lot out there that we could benefit to learn from to help us make a decision about it.
And I think we really need to define what we're talking about when we say affordable housing.
Yes.
Because when we talk about the downtown area and affordable housing, the way it's always been explained to me, it's like, you know, the $100,000 to $200,000 houses, not the subsidized, the HUD homes, the that type of affordable
Okay.
housing. So
Yep.
So I think we need a clearer definition on what we're really talking about.
Right.
I think most communities are saying worker housing,
Yeah.
you know, because for what are either good or bad, most communities get turned off if you start talking about subsidized housing. So I think that would be our focus.
Yeah, my point, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, on all that, I think it's critically important that when we're doing it, that we make sure there aren't loopholes where something gets started and you give them extra benefits and concessions because they're doing this, and then once those are done, and all of a sudden they're building something different.
I think with all those, Fred, I mean, I think that we'd have to put in time limits and conditions and stuff like that, closing those, like you would say, closing those loopholes up, make them a little tighter if there is any loopholes. We'll have to rely on John back there to
Yeah.
take care of that, him and
Community
Jay.
development will take care of that.
Right.
No, and like, affordable means something different to everybody. I
Right.
mean, right.
That's what I want,
Right,
just a
right,
definition.
Relative to the rest of the community.
Right.
And I
Good.
think when you talk about affordable housing, you're pretty much talking about higher density. And I think if you look at our comprehensive plan, we've already suggested that that should be in the downtown area. So here again, this is something that can be addressed when we look at the total downtown plan in all aspects of it. And I think the point that Fred made is a good one, that if we allow for extra density, we want to make sure it's going where we want it, rather than someplace else where it's not going to provide what we're trying to achieve. So I think his is a very good point.
Fred had one on 35 to go back just a little bit, where it talked about park impact fee monies, and he said, example, extend Cullum's Trail to the east to the flea market. So I think we actually have Cullum's Trail in here somewhere, but
Yeah.
no reason not to have it again. So just wanted to point that out.
That's an intriguing thought there.
Yeah.
Well, I
Definitely
think
put it on
three of us
Nicole's,
walked that
put it on
before the
Nicole's
election.
list. She doesn't have enough to do. so.
Any other on other? You good, Peter?
I'm okay, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So, small town charm, so it's 1 through 5.
And on 73,
You're on
I'm sorry,
You have an
line
Excel.
7, oh,
Go with the,
number 4, I guess, under
Yeah,
small town
yeah.
charm. Work with Village of Estero to preserve Edison Farms.
right.
And, you know, there has been some discussion, probably nothing new there, Carl, okay. You know, to look at possibly working with Representative Rodriguez, and also possibly looking at portions of our DRGR, which obviously has several different owners, about purchasing some of that land as well. So I guess that's my comment there. Other thoughts?
No, I'm just very much in favor of number 2, for the council to come out with a clear position in regard to how we feel about the DRGR and development there. I, for one, would like to just keep it as the comprehensive plan has defined, and though we can come up with suggestions like passive recreation, I think we should do that. But we have to I think what has been a problem for the council, observing it from the outside, is that it's not clear that there was a real commitment to have the DRGR remain as it has been planned and designed in the comprehensive plan. And I think we need to have a strong statement there. And I think as far as the last 2 things, including the one that Fred had entered, I think those are just something that we could do to enhance what we're doing for the critical groundwaters in there. And the number 5 is actually mine, the one that I suggested, because that's in my district, and I know that the mine is going to come up for a vote soon, and I'm concerned about the reclamation of that area. So I think I can do that on my own, working with staff, if you don't want to take it on as a subject. But I'm gonna pursue that, so it doesn't have to be a council position unless you two are interested in it particularly.
I'm interested,
Yeah,
but
me too.
Okay,
I think
all
it
right.
should be a council
all
thing
right, all
because
right.
it's going to affect the entire.
But have
city.
at it. Go right
Okay,
ahead.
well,
Definitely.
You can take the lead.
I have sort of a thing here with annexation agreements. So, and Audrey has been very kind to help me. We are trying to review particular ones because I think that that's something that we, the council, can look at to see if we've made an implied commitment through these annexation agreements, and that was a concern of mine. And certainly I have concern of that with the Raptor Bay property. I have a concern with the mine. Of course, that was done like 10 years ago, so we never executed that one really. But I think that from a procedural point of view, we should, in my mind, I want to clarify what the annexation agreements can or cannot do, and where the council and public could input into that, so that when we go forward, if we ever annex anybody else, which hopefully, I don't know, maybe we will or maybe we won't, we'll be clear that is effectuating the council policy. So that's sort of my pet thing. But you can join me or not, but I'm going to continue it. But everything else I agree with.
Okay.
Including the opposition to 951, I think we can do that by resolution at something. I don't think that's a
Right.
big thing that we have to study.
I was gonna say, any other thoughts? Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add, with Commissioner Kaki yesterday, we did spend some time on the Edison Farms and Bonita. He's extremely supportive of preserving Edison Farms. Had talked about, as we have talked about, what Representative Rodriguez was trying to do with respect to Amendment Number 1 money in Tallahassee in the last session, as the clock ran out there. But what Larry said was that they would clearly consider, in his view, clearly consider the possibility of 2020 money for Edison Farms if it was not the case that the Amendment 1 money was not forthcoming from Tallahassee. I talked to him about the adjacent Bonita parcels. He was very open-minded with respect to that. The possibility of considering that collectively with Edison Farms. So that's my report on that.
Great.
And then the way I see your suggestion here, this is to permanently provide for the preservation of those areas. We as a council can make a resolution that we're not going to allow for development beyond which is already allowed. That is a relatively short-term decision, because comprehensive plans can be changed, even though I hope this council will, at some point, can I say this, pass the resolution that it could only be changed with 5 votes. It'll make it a little more difficult to change the comprehensive plan. So I see that as a short-term holding pattern, and these other initiatives that are being presented would be a permanent solution to what we see as a community we'd like to preserve. So I think you have to approach it from 2 ways, and I laud that approach.
Okay.
I think the only real way to do it is to have it be city-owned property, either through 2020 or through Amendment 1 monies. Or taxpayer money.
Couldn't agree more.
Right.
So.
But you got to hold it until we can get that.
Yeah.
They're not going to come in and buy all the
But this
land up.
perpetual state of purgatory is
right.
not fair for anybody
Right,
involved.
exactly.
And that's
Anybody
it.
on
I
any
mean, it's
side
hard
of
to
the
say,
issue.
even
Right.
I think
Regardless
even-
of how you feel about the issue,
I
right?
think even if we pass a resolution tomorrow,
Well, it's what it's been, right?
depending on what it is, you pass a resolution tomorrow, I think that you will open the city up for a lawsuit to say, hey, this is the way it used to be, and this is my property. Why can't I build on it this way?
But we
So
could
I
dis-
think the only true way to do it is
Yeah.
to purchase.
But the discussion, I
I-
mean, the way it used to be is 1 in 10, and that's all the
Well, it's-
council will be reinforcing. We're
Right.
not changing that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that be changed. So any existing property owners, in my view, and of course, we could have a whole workshop on this, would have to say, this is what we have, they're not changing it, and so I don't know what they can go after us for at this point.
Well, that's what I mean. I didn't know if you meant change it to something
No,
more than
no,
that,
no, no,
because
no,
I'm
no,
just
no.
thinking of the mine. When the mine goes away, if it goes away in 2018, there's 234 acres out there. They could put 23 homes out there. There's nothing we could do about it.
Exactly, but I'm not suggesting that we don't have any development out there. We're just suggesting that we have a comprehensive plan that I think is clearly defined, and in my observer, as being an outsider, was that it wasn't clear that we were all talking about maintaining that current policy,
Okay.
all right?
No, I agree with
Maybe everybody else thought that was clear, but for those of
Yeah,
us who were sitting out there, I didn't think it was clear. So I would just like this council to be clear on that. And we could, again, maybe you don't agree with it, but let's have a discussion. And we have a short-term holding pattern, and we pursue these other things for the long term. That's all I'm saying, but I'm not
I
going
would
to
just
change
add,
anything.
I would just add one thing. I agree with everything, the gist of what you're saying, but I think it is clear. I mean, we've had 4 proposals in 16 years to change that comprehensive plan, and it's been shut down by 4 different city councils. The most recent being 2 years ago. So I don't really think there's any, I mean, I think councils have been clear that they are comfortable with that zoning out there. That's been in place for 30 years. So that's the only thing I'd quibble a little bit about. But otherwise, I agree totally with what you're saying. Let's have a vision. Let's have a vision to go forward
Right.
and do the right thing for everybody and finalize this.
Fred?
Well, I agree in principle with what Amy is saying and Peter, but I think any type of resolution that would say we are not going to do something, you've set yourself up for a action by a landowner, because they're entitled to make a proposal. Right. It comes in here and then you vote on it if it gets that far. So I'm not sure that, I don't want to say much more about it, but I think we'd want to talk individually to Audrey before we structure such a
Audrey will
one.
tell us what.
Yeah.
And just to add, in the DRGR, remember, there are also in the comprehensive plan, there is an administrative section where there are lots of records. So if there were subdivisions that did occur previously, there are people who do have rights in the DRGR that are below the 1 in 10 ratio.
Okay.
And I think what we're, at least personally, what we're talking about here is the northern DRGR. We're not talking about the southern DRGR, which is, basically full of houses.
Right.
It's where Fred lives. South end
Well,
of the
no,
DRG.
he used to be in the
I think
DRGR.
I think my friends
All
in
right.
Worthington and Palmyra live more in.
You gotta keep our pace up here.
Good place for a high school, Fred.
Yeah.
Gotta
Sorry.
keep our pace up here. Anything else on 1 through 5 in Small Town Charm? Peter, you good?
I'm good.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
All right, financial stewardship. Let's see. Well, why don't we do the whole thing, 1 through 26? Any comments?
1 through 26. I don't see 26.
Obviously, there are various subtopics in there.
Goes all the way down, all the financials.
Did you say?
No, and I would just add an overall comment with the financial stewardship. I've mentioned to Carl and Ann, there is a legal way, I guess, for lack of a better term, that the budget needs to be presented. But for anybody that hasn't sat up here, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, I'm just pointing it at myself, your eyes are going to glaze over when you see these budgets. So I just want to make sure that we have a way to walk through it this year, that it's very, very, very clear what's going on. And they get that and understand that, so. And, what we have 2 years out and 3 years out, sometimes those things aren't quite so obvious. So, just general statement there.
It's interesting, the charter actually says, not that we want to change the whole process, but the charter actually says the budget shall be presented in such form as the city manager deems desirable or as city council may require. So I think there is some flexibility in it.
Okay. Let's flex away so that it's clear to folks. And any other comments on financial stewardship? Impact fees?
Well, I guess one thing that was brought up was when a developer comes forward and wants to do something in the DRGR, community development works on it, and we don't really charge a fee for that for a larger development for our time. And I know it was brought up that maybe we should look at doing that, not for the small person that's building a house, or but for our larger development, maybe we should have some kind of fee to go with our time.
And not just for the DRGR.
Well, yeah, for anything.
Major, right.
I thought we were going to get some information in that regard of what's done in other communities, so we
Yeah.
can review that.
I think some of the comments.
Oh, I'm
that I
sorry, Fred.
Gave you, well, they may not have ended up in there, but I know that just getting an accounting of different contract sizes and the fees that are being paid, I know in one of my other lives, I was really big on this, but you'd be amazed how easy it is to fall into a situation where fees are higher than what they need to be. And it's because everybody gets comfortable. Let me just give you a case in point. My observation is in the private sector, the fees that are paid to architects, project or construction managers, engineering, lower than up north. My initial look-see at fees on the governmental that they pay, I think there might be higher than up north. And so I think the only way to do this is we look at it, and you're not looking, it's not a witch hunt, it's just to see where we are. If we are paying higher fees, there are ways to get them down. As I can say I successfully did that in the past. And if you take your projects and think about the fees, you can save a lot of money in 5 years by just making a reduction in fees that are paid.
Okay.
And Fred, you had one other one here, which was under downtown redevelopment, which says pros and cons of widening the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
You want to address that?
Well, yes, all that I've suggested is we need to have, and it would be part of this broader review of Old Downtown, is what other costs that we may have incurred that we haven't officially found out about yet, are we having? What reductions in scope have been made to kind of balance some of those excess costs? And then on the bridge, which is sitting there, we need to get it resolved, and there's two ways you can do it. The way they were going to do it, they were going to widen it, put wider sidewalks, put a median down the center of the bridge. And that, I've heard all kind of figures of what it might cost, but it's going to cost a lot of money. Another way you can achieve most of that is to eliminate putting the median in the bridge, get rid of the big heavy side guardrails, which we would do in widening anyway. And if you do that, because those weigh a lot, they're solid concrete and they're about 36 inches high, you can tack on and extend the width of that bridge without doing anything technical to it. It can be done, so you could pick up a foot and a half on the sidewalks on both sides, then you'll have the open look by whatever kind of side rails you put up. And a lot of money could be saved. You might get it for 1/3 the cost. And that doesn't preclude in the future redoing a bridge and putting a median when you have lots of money, but right now, I don't think we're in that position.
Carl, do you want to chat about that?
Well, first off, there's not going to be a median in the middle of the bridge, on the bridge itself. There will be medians that are designed on the approaches to the bridge, but not on the bridge itself. The way the agreement was structured was that there was a guaranteed price, and again, it's probably more detailed than we need today, but there was a guaranteed price with Wright Construction of $15.6 million, okay? On top of that was an additional $3 million, not under Wright, they'll still coordinate it, but it's not part of their contract, $1.5 million for undergrounding utilities, and $1.5 million for, what's the other $1.5 million?
It was for the design, to answer Carl's
for
question.
the design.
Matt Feeney, for the record, Public Works Director. We have directed Wright to look at additional solutions other than just widening the bridge. Part of their solution to widening has actually been modified to go from a pre-tension span, which was quite costly, to driving piles in the bridge to get the extra width. But we also have them developing a number for improvements, as Councilman Forbes suggested, where we may not have as wide of a multi-use path on both sides, but it appears it'll be fairly significant, and they're developing that number to bring back to council in addition to essentially a project update.
So we are sensitive to the need to keep the cost down for the whole project. But I want to make it clear to the entire council here, especially those who are new here, that the bridge itself, that improvement, is not within the budget at this point in time.
Right.
And what the contractor is working towards is saving enough on the contract in order to do the bridge, whatever design that ends up to be. Then on top of that, also not in the budget is the land acquisition for the roundabout at Terry and Old 41, okay? Now, that was done for a couple of reasons. Number one, we didn't want to be talking publicly about a budget that would be available to acquire land. And number two, we probably weren't really sure at that point in time how much land was actually going to have to be acquired. We have spent a significant amount of time over the last year working on resolving conflicts on the four corners of Old 41 and Terry, so that we can minimize any kind of required land from the landowners. There will be some expense, but we are trying to significantly reduce that by actually redesigning the roundabout a little bit, to bring it in a little bit tighter, and we continue to work with that. So I just wanted council to see kind of the big picture, high-level view of the structure of the deal.
So just back of the envelope on this. So the bridge obviously was one of the hallmarks of the original concept of the whole downtown streetscape. But that was taken out, not included in the 15.5 or 15.8, whatever the number.
That is correct.
15.8 or 5?
15.6, I think.
15.6,
Yes, sir.
right. And that was 2 million. So you're saying the extra 3 was for the undergrounding utilities plus the original design work?
Yes, sir.
So just quick back of the envelope, 15.6 plus 3 plus the bridge 2 plus the Liberty Lighthouse property 1 million plus 11 property 100,000 plus whatever we're going to do on the roundabouts is 18.6, 20.6, 21.6, 21.7. And then we have the ancillary work on Terry Street that is not technically part of the downtown project, which is for more open from Terry over to the middle school. So it's just a general, is that a fair back of the envelope? Understanding you're trying to save the 2 million on the bridge?
Oh, you've added the 2 million into the cost, yes,
2
sir.
million on the bridge, which is the original bridge number.
Right. Yeah, I would say that is a very fair assessment, other than I don't believe we'd previously counted the 11 property within the scope of the project.
Right, it was bought
Right.
as
And we
part
did-
of the
Right, but, well, if I might.
Right.
Okay, and you can add it up any way you want, the numbers are there, but.
Right.
11 property was purchased for land banking for
Right.
economic development purposes. And it is expected that the city will redevelop that property or have a private company come in and redevelop the property, as it will with Bamboo property.
Right.
Where money was also spent
Right.
years and years ago.
Right.
The $1 million spent on the Liberty Lighthouse.
Right.
That property was originally purchased not to do a library.
Right.
Okay, it was going to be some other purpose, whether it be the centralized stormwater system, whatever, but still would have been a downtown expense.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So take out 100 for 11, yeah.
And just to clarify, Councilman, the bridge, what Wright has been working to do is try to as closely as possible through a change in design, as well as evaluating concepts like Councilman Forbes, is try to bring that $2 million cost down and really try to fit it as close as possible within the existing contingency dollars of the 15.6, which are included in that. So we're trying to provide an acceptable product that is a hallmark and recognize it as a key component that council would like to see.
And it was the original part of this is why we're doing it.
Right.
And yet it's out of it's out of the 15, so not included in the 15.6. So, but I appreciate your efforts on it.
And I expect to have that answer for council's consideration, as well as the essentially the preferred or recommended Terry Street roundabout here as we come forward to bring a presentation to council about the overall downtown project.
Matt,
So
when you do the thing on the roundabout, will you have, what's the gentleman that's your roundabout expert?
Oh, yeah.
He has the accent.
Is he the Australian guy?
Michael
Yes, sir.
Warwick.
Yeah, the-
Michael Warwick. Yeah.
Well, no, all I want to do is I want to hear from him what we're giving up, because there is a point as you shrink a roundabout down that you may be saving money, but you're causing yourself not. I just want to make sure that we don't do that. We don't want to be penny wise, pound foolish if we put one in.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, Fred.
to answer your question, Councilman O'Flynn had it correct. His name is Michael Woolwork, and he is more than capable of explaining the trade-offs. And I think what we've really done is been able to work together to a solution that satisfies Michael's concerns and is a good and safe feature for the community, but isn't cut to the bone, so to speak, to where you lose functionality in
Yeah, my only
aesthetics. But
only area I'm interested in is that we maintain the throughput.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right. Like, me too.
But I think this is great, and I think that workshop will be productive. And let me say this, things that have happened to Old 41 are, if you remember, I think in my public comment, I said, once you approve it, the cost will only go up because there's things that no one could foresee that you're going to run into, and that's just part of construction.
Matt, on the side streets, I know Reynolds has the slant parking on it. On the other side streets, are there more slant parking?
there are really
Plans?
only, Councilman, two areas in the project that have angled parking, which is Reynolds, which you can see, and then Childers, which we're working on. We have the drainage in currently. You'll actually see that come to completion here in the next couple of weeks. But Reynolds and Childers, which are on the north and south side of the banyan tree, are the two streets that have the angled parking feature. The remainder of the project is either parallel, which is primarily along Old 41, as well as the side streets, and then Feltz Avenue, which has right angle head-end parking.
Okay, so those are the only two streets that are going to have slant.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was going to be on other streets, if we could go to the right angle just to get more spots in, but.
No, it's really only those two streets, and the reasoning is there was a little wider right-of-way for both of those. I don't know whether it was a function of the banyan tree when the downtown was platted, but if you look, the plat is an octagonal plat, and we had a little more right-of-way to be able to construct that.
Any other?
Yeah, just Carl, how
Greg?
much are we receiving from the county for this project? I mean,
I'm sorry?
how much monies are we receiving from the county for this project?
If you calculate it, it's about, outside of the library being constructed there, the revenue sharing agreement ought to end up around $9 million
Okay.
from the county.
So almost half of.
The vast majority of it in the next decade. So, and that's one of the reasons why one of the items on here is a presentation on what the contractual TIF will be giving us. So if you looked at the original sheet that the city gave to the county 3 years ago, it had the vast majority of it coming in after 2024, 2025. The reason being nothing more than, it relates to the increase in assessed value. Now, we've done better in increased in assessed value in the last few years, so maybe some of it will be accelerated forward. But there's one other cash flow, if I might, aspect to Old 41 on top of these spending. We're actually paying down at the rate of about $1 million a year the debt that was incurred. So, ballpark, it's been $3 million over 3 years, something like that, something like $1 million a year, I think, Carl, on that debt. So that's why I think it'd be good to get a holistic kind of cash flow presentation on this.
Well,
Because
I
money received in 2025 is not money we can spend today to offset this.
Right, and I understand that. I guess my thought is maybe this is where we come in and talk to Larry Kiker and other council members. Hey, we're doing better than what you had expected, so
Right.
give us our money a little bit sooner.
Well,
They did
well,
it on the
deal
beach with what's going on down there.
the
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
From here.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, Fred, go ahead.
Well, we're almost having a workshop on Old.
Fair point.
That's true.
I,
true.
right.
We ought to
I
move
think we
on.
should move on.
Okay.
Good point.
Yeah,
We agreed that
All
we'll
right.
have a workshop.
Well done, Fred.
Yeah, I think this is focus on the fiscal side of it, the financial side of it is
Right.
really important, but I'd like to focus on the visionary side of it, which I also think is important, and it goes hand in hand. And I don't think you can start on the finances. I think you have to see what you're trying to do there. So we can move, we could move on.
Carl, you're going to put Fred's comments in whatever the revised.
Yes, I'm assuming
Yeah.
unless
Right.
directed otherwise, they're automatically
Right.
included in this, yes.
Great.
Okey doke. So, with that proper chastisement, Fred, I appreciate that. We are up to, well, Peter,
You
you
sure
got-
you don't want to belabor it anymore, Fred, or are we good?
No, I think I said we violently
All
agree
right,
to have
okay.
a workshop.
Right.
Awesome, great.
You good, Peter, up to government transparency? Everybody? Yep. Everybody else? Greg? Steve? Yeah. So government transparency, 1 through, why don't we do 1 through 16?
Which I just want to talk on transparency. I think that goes two ways. You know, we have to, I think we already took a step forward on that with our suggestion that we open up community input to the council following zoning hearings. That's a good step. I think we should continue to, on the government side, on the city side, to provide information to our residents in as clear and as easily accessible manner as possible. And then I personally think it's the responsibility of each individual district representative to make an effort to visit or interact on a one-on-one or one community basis with all the neighborhoods in your district. And that's what I'm trying to do. Laura's helping me with that, and we can just report back what success we have. I know sometimes the neighborhoods don't want to see us, and other neighborhoods always want to see us. So I think we're going to deal with that, and maybe that's been done before, but that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm very much in favor of these things that are identified in this way under transparency, and if there are any other issues that are not here, I will, that's one of the issues that I'm particularly interested in, transparency.
Good. Anybody else, any comments or thoughts? No? Okay. Sure, public comment. Great time for public comment.
My name is Barbara Craig, and, I've been here many times. About transparency and making things available to the public, I would like to encourage that happen in a timely manner. To get things a day or two before a hearing doesn't give those of us who don't happen to have staff quite enough time to really respond. So I would just encourage that information not only be transparent and complete, but timely as well.
Right.
Okay,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. Anybody else from the public? Yeah, Marty, come on up.
No, I just want to ask Fred to speak into his microphone.
For as much as he talks, it's hard to hear him at times, you know?
Maybe done on purpose.
Yeah, that's on purpose, maybe, yeah, right. Great. Anybody else? Amy, did you have something?
Are we on a comprehensive plan? I mean, we're going to the next one or not?
That's in here. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I definitely think that the council, in an expeditious way, should start the review of the EAR report. And I'm not exactly sure about the procedures, but I think the LPA does it first, or we said we were going to hold workshops on various elements of that, and I don't know if that starts at the LPA or at the council meeting, but I would not like that to be delayed, because there's certain aspects of it that I think need to be addressed and ratified one way or the other.
I made a suggested add to that, and I basically said that I thought that city council should do a review of the proposed changes through the year process here first, so we could eliminate LPA spending a lot of time on proposals that we're not gonna lift off the runway when they get here. So I think that has to happen pretty quick. That's one of my in red changes.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Isn't it a two-pronged, in the ear and this whole thing, a two-pronged thing? One thing we're doing that has to be done through the state level, then suggestions, so it's it's a
Correct.
two-pronged
Yeah.
thing. All right, just checking to make
And,
sure.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, staff would like some direction from council as to how you would like it to approach that. We obviously have a lot of other things going on at community development because of the growth in the community anyway. Our thought was originally was that we would bring to you the state-required changes first, okay, and get through that process, and then come back and workshop as much as council and LPA would like to, the balance of the report. It may take a little while, but we're only under a time restriction from the state for state-mandated changes. And we have to have that done in 1 year, and because we are sensitive to the fact that we have a number of residents who live outside of Florida for a significant amount of time, we want to make sure that we get the work done within the amount of time we need in order to hold the public hearings in season before we send this off to the state again, those state changes. And those state changes are due April 1st of 2017. So whatever, if you want us to do some of that concurrently, we can do that. It's really up to how council wants to proceed.
How do you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Arlene?
We do have funding in this fiscal year to start that process, so should the council want to work again with Florida Gulf Coast University to start the state mandated process.
Now, the state stuff is very straightforward.
Right, yeah.
Right, almost negligible, right? Is that correct?
I
believe-
think they're pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but there's still a process of going through
Right,
and
right.
vetting it all properly.
There is proper advertising requirements as well as several public hearings, so we would be following the processes that we
Right.
did with the year.
I mean, to me, the proper course is along the lines that you described, which is get rid of the state stuff as appropriate, get rid of it, deal with it as
Understood.
appropriate, all right? And then, as Fred says, there are whole chunks that I think a lot of us have indicated previously of the optional items that I think, personally speaking, a lot of us wouldn't spend a lot of time on. So that'd make for a more efficient process going forward. Have a process, whether it's a workshop or whatever, to get a council consensus on that, and then be left with whatever the few, in my view, few optional items are to spend some serious time on.
Okay, so am I hearing from council then that we do the state mandated first? That's what we work on. We don't work on any of that other. We work on state mandated first. Perhaps when we get to a point where it's now funneled into the legal process and we're headed for the hearings that we need to have before LPA and before council, that then we can maybe start the workshop portion of the balance of the document, and we can take whatever amount of time council and the LPA need to go through all of those.
Let me
Is that-
just make one observation, and not to predict, but FGCU did a lot of good work on, particularly in my view, on the transportation side and the downtown side. And that's going to require some real deliberation and some real work, in my personal view, by FGCU, all right, with respect to it. So I think you need to be careful here that we allow time on the back end, although I guess there's really no deadline on that at all, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, it could go on forever, which we don't want, but, so, I mean, I would just think about that. But first, you need a council consensus on what I'm saying. This is just my personal view.
Well, we have those, both of those elements that we're going to discuss and have a council consensus on the
Okay.
transportation and the downtown.
Right.
And maybe as we discuss those, we could also look at the elements that have been suggested as the optional elements in the comprehensive plan. So we easily could integrate that. I just want to, and I'm very much in favor of the suggestion to do the state mandate. And my impression, because I did read all those optional 140 ones and the other ones, that the state mandate ones will probably be somewhat routine. And I think that we could present them to council in a package, and we could review them ahead of time. And if there's anything in, I mean, we absolutely have to adopt them, but we don't have that option. But we have to go through the process. But some of those optional things that created public concern, not positively acting against them, if I can speak in the negative, will continue to have that concern in people's minds. So if we go through certain, like, I'll give you one example that is a problem for me. The suggestion that we move the height restrictions from the comprehensive plan to the land development code. I don't want that personally, and I'm not, I will look at it and keep it open minded if I have to vote on that as a council person. But I think for those people, it would be better to say, no, we absolutely do not want to adopt this. So no action is also sending messages, and I think that we don't want to eliminate making those statements from the council. So maybe we could extract certain things that we want to look at and not look at in little bunches. It takes organization, but first do the state mandate, and maybe we can come back and each of us look through the 141 of those and pull out things that we think we could have in little bunches and look at it and then discuss it.
Audrey, did you have?
I did, in the sense that when you're talking about comprehensive plan changes, there's very specific statutes, as well as city ordinances on the local planning agency, that they're the ones who are supposed to do the review and recommendation. So creating kind of a review first by council and then giving them, and then I wasn't sure if that met the statutory intent and the concern there of that. I don't think it's a problem if you tell them, hey, this is our policy, where we think we're going, but they're supposed to have the control of the document.
Maybe we could talk
Fred?
a little.
Well, I'd like to make a couple inputs. Number one, on the absolute requirements we have to change because state, as Peter has said, that should be fairly routine, but there are possibilities that things could creep in there that we didn't realize were getting in. Such as somehow affecting zoning and things in some of the annexed areas and all that. I believe that what we should do is staff works on that, and about the 50, 60% or 70% come in and give us an overview on what the specifics are that they've come up with. That way, if we have an area that we're not comfortable with, we're not up against a time frame, deadline. Secondly, agreeing with what Audrey has said, I think that's right, but I think there's no harm in saying, how does council feel about most of the moving stuff from the comp plan to land development code? We could say we don't really think that would be advisable. That doesn't mean it's a final word, but at least LPA doesn't spend as much time on proposed changes in that area.
Audrey, I think it just may be helpful, not now, but to think about that a little more, because it's been before LPA, and most recently was at council. And then you have the other concept, don't you, that, a change to the comprehensive plan is an ordinance change, right? It's a policy
Yes.
change by council. So, I mean, the normal process with respect to that is if somebody on council wanted to change something in the comp plan, they would first say, gee, I'm interested in changing something, all right? Then it would go to the LPA for proper deliberation. Then it would come back to council. So no one on council has made a decision that they're really interested in, for example, changing the height limits in the comp plan. So for further discussion is what I'm suggesting. It might be proper legally.
I understand, but they're
Okay.
just pointing out that we're walking a very careful line because there are statutory processes that we want to make sure we're not obscuring
Right,
as a
and I'm
result of how we
suggesting
do
we
it.
may be in line with that.
And that's fine.
in an efficient process. But let's consider that in the future. So,
So Carl, we're going forward with the state mandate. Just to reiterate, so we're all on the same page. We're going through with the state mandated what we need to change for the comp plan. Going to do that prior to and vote and do our statutory, our due diligence.
Yes, sir.
Prior to April of 17.
That's correct.
Somewhere after we've filed, we'll get together with the 141 changes that were suggested by FGCU at that time.
Depending on how timing is for what council's working on as well as staff, we may not have to wait until April 1st to
Correct.
begin the second phase, if you will.
Right.
Correct.
We'll just see how things go, but absolutely state mandated first, move those along as efficiently as we can, and then get into the rest of the document, if that's okay with
Copy that.
council.
Is it safe to assume, isn't Alexis and Shelley and company working on those state mandated changes now?
No, they are not.
No.
We waited for direction from this council on the process and moving forward. And with this direction, we will ask Dr. Banning to come forward and do a presentation. And also, we do have the funding in this fiscal year to start those state mandated changes now. So we could start moving on that process and have them come forward and work with that. There was also recommendations from the LPA previously to take the recommended changes in bite sizes by element, and what the council could possibly do is prioritize those elements for us, for the LPA to examine those. For example, transportation might be top priority element, because you might want to enter some of those priorities of multimodal transportation efforts, because that might make us more eligible in the future for further state grant funds, federal funds, and also it helps when negotiating with developers. If those policies and procedures are in the comprehensive plan, there's a little bit more teeth to the to the land development applications that come in. We can refer to those policies when we are reviewing those applications. So we would work with you for you to give us direction on prioritizing those elements, which would make it more bite-sized, and then dive into the workshops, possibly element by element. But there might be opportunities, like we said, that it might make more sense to move things up in prioritization.
Audrey, just to that point, can we do things piecemeal, leaving aside advertising costs?
Yeah, right. I mean, you have a year to get things done, just like we took the railroad out of line of the year.
And just,
Fred?
Well, I
I'm
was just
sorry.
going to say,
Sorry.
only because there is a schedule, and even though it sounds like it's very generous, could we get that presentation not at this meeting tomorrow, but the next one?
May
You're talking from
To
Margaret
get, to
Banyan?
get formal authorization from the council to proceed with Godspeed on the required state mandated stuff.
I will talk with Dr. Banyan to see if they're available May 18th, and if not, we'll try for the first meeting in June.
Okay.
And just to clarify, yes, we do not currently have a contract with Florida Gulf Coast. We would be extending the contract that we had and moving forward with that process. And we also do not have a contract to do the recommended workshops, but
Right.
that's something we had gotten some direction on from you previously to try to move to that direction.
Could we do that part A? I mean, everybody here would, if we, if a motion was made at the Wednesday or the end of the month meeting, just to proceed immediately authorizing Florida Gulf Coast to extend their contract to do the part that's state mandated, I can't imagine I wouldn't even have to have a presentation to vote on that. And that gets them going, and then you can come back and adequately give them time to come up with their costs to do the other thing.
Well, we will need a contract.
Right.
And she's going to put a number to that contract. We don't know what that number is right now.
Right.
We would feel more comfortable thinking council would want to see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But they could probably give you the number for the state mandated real quick. They may not be able to give you the number on the other part.
What I will do is talk to Dr. Banyan and
Okay.
see how quickly, through her process at the university, she could provide us with that addendum to the contract and work with Audrey. And then
Good.
if we can place the proposed addendum on the 18th, we will, and if not, we'll try to
Okay.
do it for the first meeting in June, knowing that that's the direction you'd like us to go.
Fair enough.
Pete? Or
Oh,
Steve?
anything-
Let's move on.
Okay.
Call the question.
Call the question, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Are we done with, we all set? All right. So we're on to environmental protection.
Can I go back to, one of the things I just hope that we're all sensitive to is scheduling city council workshops. You know, the first one that we had was scheduled for 4 hours, and it went 5 hours. That's 5 hours that the city staff are away from their positions. And I'm just wondering if we could be a little bit more sensitive in terms of scheduling and the amount of time that we spent with the city staff away from their work. That's all.
And I don't think city staff needs to all be present for every workshop.
Right.
The environmental protection,
Yep.
1 through 12. Going.
Any, gonna
That's
say
it.
anybody?
That's
Yeah.
fine.
We're good.
That's good. I think we're good.
Downtown revitalization, 1 through 10.
I think the only item here is that all these things need to be integrated, so I'm going to rely on staff to do that, since they don't have anything else to do.
Well, thank you.
I'm kidding.
No, I just want to,
No.
I know. I just want to assure council that the way at least I see this coming forward on a topic like transportation, downtown, all of these things you see listed separately here will be bundled into one workshop, and we will try to cover as much territory as we can on these topics, as long as council's satisfied with what they're hearing.
Right.
And obviously, if we need additional information we need to come back to you for, we will. Okay.
And Steve, I'm sensitive to your point about staff. I think that, you know, we try to be as efficient as we can. So, Mr. Mayor, we're done
I was
with that
gonna say
one? Yeah.
downtown
Okay.
revitalization.
Downtown revitalization, 1 through
10.
10.
That looks good.
It's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Sold? Mike? You good? Yeah?
You know, the bonus density policies, I mean, I think, absolutely.
Okay. Economic development. Carl, can I ask a question? It just comes up here. It really is.
Sure.
The point Christine has left, I thought was a really interesting one about parkland and such. Is community development staff available to work with respect to that type of idea? He's shaking his head, yes.
Isn't that more Parks and Recreation?
I think so.
Yeah.
See, you need to understand that your current Parks Master Plan does not call for any additional parks.
That's right.
Okay, given our population, especially with a significant amount of it behind gates, it's been determined, again, previously, that we do not need additional parks. Remember also, as you add parks, you add personnel to maintain them. It's kind of like landscaping. You plant it, you got to take care of it. If you put a park in, you've got to maintain it. And if the council wants to go further and actually have programs in that park, you need to have the ability to either contract for those programs or have people available. But
Right.
yes, I mean, between Parks and Recreation and community development, if that's the direction council wants, absolutely.
And my thought was, and she was specifically talking about the northern DRGR. You know, there have been various suggestions, proposals, whatever you want to call them, ideas from time to time from citizens about that area. Of course, it's private land and would have to be purchased at an arm's length basis. But as we progress, and if we progress toward a solution for that area other than constant fighting, develop it, don't develop it, but a win-win for everyone, including the landowners in that northern part, on a no eminent domain basis, ideas like that, and fair point you make, you know, it costs money to maintain things, but ideas like that are essentially community development ideas.
Right.
You know, and it would be good if it's possible to have the resources of the Community Development Department, which are substantial, focusing on that type of community development consistent with the comprehensive plan, in addition to just working with people who want to change the comprehensive plan. So that's why I raised the point. But
Right.
I agree with you totally. I mean, I'm
And-
not jumping to say we should have a
No,
park.
and I understand that. And of course, we make any resources we have available to the council on directives that you give us, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Mike? Yes, sir. Come on up.
John West, for the record. The city manager mentioned that we have enough park space, but in actual fact, have we? The question arises because we only have enough space if we take into consideration Lover's Key. Lover's Key is supposed to be 1,616 acres, which actually it isn't. There are 3 different calculations for the size of Lover's Key. One is 716 acres, another one is 1,616 acres, and another one is 1,397 acres. The correct one is the one that the FDEP people have, which is 1,397 acres. Now, of that 1,397 acres, only about 500 and some acres consists of dry land. The rest of it is water. And the proposition is that we should have maybe some more soccer fields and stuff like that. Well, you can't have soccer fields on seawater. So that's something to be looked into. I don't think people in Bonita Springs have the time to go to Lover's Key. Most of that place is actually, I sat there one day and counted for a couple of hours who comes from Bonita and who comes from Fort Myers Beach. And only 38% came from Bonita Springs. The rest come from Fort Myers Beach. So for that to be considered an amenity for the citizens of Bonita Springs is a moot point. It's a long way to go. And if you go from parts of Bonita there to Lover's Key, it takes over an hour in the season to get there. So I bring this to your attention. I don't think that we do have enough park space. Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment? Okay.
I just
Mike?
had one question on the downtown before we move. Says number 8, receive presentation relating to options for Imperial Bridge improvements on Terry Street. Is Terry Street just on there by accident? Because Imperial Bridge doesn't go over Terry. Or Terry Street doesn't go over the Imperial Bridge.
That's a mistake.
2 options for Imperial.
What's up with number 8?
I think that might be a Scrivener's error.
You
sir.
didn't hear about you didn't hear about the flyover?
We're turning Terry
Where you
Street
been?
now? Okay.
It's going to start by Wonder Gardens, go over to the
Okay.
school.
All right, I got you.
We just relocated.
Good catch.
And number 9, just with the bus pull-offs, the adequacy of them, right? I've noticed some buses pull off, some don't. I mean, is there any way to make sure we get them all pulling off into there?
I've recently observed the same, particularly in the downtown where we constructed the bus pull-offs, and the first week that we opened that stretch of Old 41, they utilized them, and now it appears at least the southbound route is stopping in traffic, which when we were designing it, that was actually Lee Tran's preference for utilization, but the community expressed a concern. So I have that on my list of things to take up with my Lee-Tran counterparts about utilizing what we built for them.
Okay. But they are adequate enough for them, right?
Yes, I've
'Cause,
got
I've seen them
photographic
pull in there
evidence
before,
to prove so.
it should work. Okay.
Yep.
Are we good on downtown revitalization, everybody?
Mhm.
Steve, you good? Yep. Okay. Okay, Peter?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, economic development, 1 through 7. There's obviously more to economic development than this, but this is what happens to be on this list, so.
I just like to make a message, a statement. I'm working with Arlene Hunter. We had our first meeting with the Horizon Council Executive Director, and my impression from that was that I think that one of the most important things we can do for economic development is to brand Bonita Springs. And these other things that we're talking about, developing the downtown, environmental protection, open space, access to the beach, that is really what we need to focus on. I sort of subscribe to the idea that if you build them, they will come, and not necessarily build buildings, but build all these other things about the character of our city. And again, I totally agree that we should work with these, not only Horizon Council, but the Chamber of Commerce and all these other economic development entities to somehow differentiate ourselves from the other communities in Lee County. And if we do that, I think we'll be in very good shape. And that's what I would like to focus on.
Yep. Anybody else? Thoughts?
Other than to say I totally agree. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
8, other.
Yeah, no, I guess I would just say absolutely with an asterisk for number 1.
We already have that scheduled for
Yeah.
the first
yeah,
meeting in
great.
June.
Awesome. Thank you.
I volunteered Greg for that.
Okay, so.
Is that going to be an interactive presentation?
Yeah.
Councilman?
Anytime we need to go see the South EOC.
Yeah, it's a good visit.
Yes.
All right, so thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Carl, I think it probably would be best to actually go to the last item now, which was the
Which item is that?
summary, suggested statement of initiatives, and then hold a workshop for after this. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry.
I'm
All
sorry,
right,
sir. I
so
don't
yesterday,
understand.
you and I took a shot at the suggested statement of initiatives for council prioritization.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I think since we're fresh off of going through all of it, it might make sense at this point to go through that document.
Sure.
The one page.
This one here, the one pager. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So why don't I start and Carl chip in here. The notion of this, when Carl and I and Ann met yesterday, is at the end of the day, what we have here, what we just went through, there's a lot on there, and that's going to fit into eventually a schedule not dissimilar to what Carl prepared 2 years ago, which is a strategic action plan register. So, Carl will take that on board. But it's important for us to, Carl felt, and I agree with this, to come up with some succinct statement of what our priorities are, not to the exclusion of some of the smaller stuff on that bigger list, and off of that and Carl helped me with this, but prioritize for city staff what among them are to us the most important items. Not that Carl's not going to deal and staff is not going to deal with all of them. Is that fair, Carl?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what this one pager is, a suggested statement of initiatives for council prioritization. And what it does is just take a shot at each one of the items we have just gone through and highlight as best as possible what are the major themes of them. So for example, in transportation, there's a lot of things in there, but we boil it down to develop and begin implementation of quadrant plan, beach road visioning, and multimodal master plan, not to the exclusion of the other items, and down through. Anything you want to add to that, Carl, in terms of?
No, I think you've said it very well. We're looking here, when you're talking a strategic plan, you are talking very high level. You are talking, as the council member said, for themes and basically overall direction as to what you'd like to do. Every individual little step that it's going to take to achieve these does not need to be in your overall strategic plan.
Right.
Those are implementation steps, which we can then group appropriately under an executive action register to keep track of how we're doing.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amy, Greg, anything? You know?
No, I think it sounds good. I mean, these are in no particular order of, as in priority. This is just our priority for the next year is what we.
This was in the order that was in the thing now.
Right,
Carl
but it's
wants
not-
them- Carl wants them in a particular order.
Yeah, I would like you to rank these if you would, if you can kind of get through that, but rank each major thing
Right,
here
like
that's
transportation
underlined,
number
yeah.
one, where parks, in my opinion, should be number 2 versus
Okay.
government transparency. And I think for the mayor himself, I think government transparency is probably number 1 on his priority, along with the finance and the budgeting. So I'm just saying, is that what I'm hearing you want us to rank?
Yes.
These at this point now?
Correct.
Okay.
Are you okay, Amy, with the concept? of-
I have different priorities, so it's going to be interesting. I was just going to suggest that we choose a number, like 1, 2, or 3, and have the council members say what in any order, 3 items that they want to put at the top of the list, and see how much commonality we have, and maybe we could start right there, or pick two of them. What are your top 2? And then we can prioritize. And I also want to ask Carl, how many of these do you think is practical to focus on? I think at one time you said maybe 3 or 4 and you can be most effective, or do you see some of these as not as time consuming as others? I
Well,
guess that's the other thing.
thank you for the question. First off, I heard Councilmember DeWitt talk about, this is what we want to do in the next year. Probably longer than that, okay? To be honest.
Right.
Some of
13
these-
months.
Some of these things are going to take a significant amount of time to get through. But I think if it really depends on what you choose as to how many we can handle. So I'm okay if you would like to go through the ranking exercise that you suggest, because it might be interesting to see how the council is together on probably, my guess is at least 2 or 3 of them, if not more. And then maybe the rest of them will all fall out as it's not that they're less important, but in terms of this council today, these are the things that are going to be most important. I suspect over time, as the city accomplishes maybe some of those higher objectives, or those higher areas, that this will evolve. And then all of a sudden, number 1 can drop off because you've accomplished that, and number 5 is now number 2 or whatever. So it's really it's a living, breathing document, and it can be changed, of course, at any time the council wants. But this is going to provide staff initial direction on what you want us spending our time on most immediately.
Carl, sorry.
I just had a quick comment about that, and that's kind of what I meant by the next year. We know, thinking to myself, transportation and DRGR, those are long-term plans. Those are not going to be accomplished in this next year, per se. The study may be done, but the implementation, like Amy had said in the beginning, this is a 2 or 3 year project, whatever we're going to do with that corner. Is that something that we want to put our number 1 on, even though transportation is number 1? It may be a long-term goal, just like DRGR. If we're talking about eminent domain, getting 2020 land or monies, or
Not eminent domain.
Amendment 1, is that something we want or staff to focus on? Whereas, the community aesthetics, between Nicole and community development, they can get on that right away with parks, art and public places.
If I might, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So when Peter and I were talking yesterday, I kind of gave an example about how this might work. So for example, transportation, if transportation is number one, it doesn't mean that we're going to be spending every hour of every day working on transportation.
Gotcha.
Because right now you have a consultant that you have retained who's going to spend a number of months out there with our assistance, but again, primarily the consultant working. So that means staff doesn't necessarily need to be working on that part of the transportation now, which means then we drop to number 2 or number 3 and say, you know, how can we best spend our time to be moving these priorities along. So we kind of have to manage our time on that.
Okay.
So it's not like if you pick number 1 and it's transportation, that doesn't mean we won't be working on anything else. It just, we will work when we can and when we should on that priority as a number 1. If we have to pick how we're going to spend our time between 1, 2, and 3, and we've got work in all 3 areas, number 1 is where we're going to put our time on that particular day, if that's helpful.
I do think that it's important that we sort of identify our visions and all these things. So even though I think transportation largely is a longer-term goal, we have to, as a council, if this is we all agree, is say this is really a very high priority because we're dealing with a failed intersection. I don't think too many people would disagree with us, but we should say, yes, we agree that this is a failed intersection and we're going to fix it. Right. And if it takes us 3 years, it takes us 3 years. But there are steps that can be taken along the way to improve that. So sort of along the lines that Carl had said. So I think we should, even if we can't accomplish it, reach the goal, we should say this is definitely something that we think is a very high priority. And we're going to stick to it. We're not going to just give up in a year to do it.
And I think that's well said. No, I think that's very
The only other thing I wanted to add in, so financial stewardship really drives through the budget, and that's Ann's area, you know, so it's kind of like, to me, that's one extremely important, and it's going to go through the budget.
Right.
Right, so.
You make a great point. Some of these things are naturally going to occur because of the schedule already.
Right. And then downtown revitalization, I mean, that's moving, you know, so, I mean, to me, that's extremely important, but I wouldn't put it on the top only because it's going forward anyhow. And,
Right.
you know, Matt's spending 200% of his time on it, you know, so, for good reason.
Well, how do we want to do this? How do we want to rank these? Let's go through that process.
Amy, what were you suggesting we do?
I said pick a number and we each give our top 3, whatever.
Top 3?
Yeah.
All right.
And see what happens.
So what do you want us to do? Write them down?
Why don't we
orally or-
just go back and forth
We
every?
could just do orally, yeah.
Yeah.
We all do one and go around,
Well, go ahead,
okay?
you're first. You're District 1.
I'm going to do
District number 1.
Transportation is what I'm going to say.
You're gonna do all 3 or just
No, I'm going to do one. We'll keep going.
Yep,
I'd say transportation's my number 1 also.
Okay.
that's also my number 1.
Number 1,
Number 1, yeah,
transportation.
number 1.
So we have a majority.
So that's pretty good.
Fred,
Okay, now go back the other way so I don't
are
have
you
to
going to
start.
disagree, Fred?
No, I'll
Go ahead, Fred,
say
disagree.
it's number 2.
Okay, well, what's number 1?
Yeah, what's number 2?
What's number 1?
Number 1's transportation, unanimously,
Fred.
right.
Yeah.
And then Fred, we're going to start with you. What's number 2?
Those things pertain to transparency.
Transparency, okay.
Transparency.
Okay.
But see, that's not like transportation, that's just kind of stuff we do in the city.
Right.
Talking your mic.
Talk in that microphone, buddy.
Marty can't hear you. Marty can't hear you.
More transparent.
You know
I'm going to
what?
have fun with this one, Marty. Thanks for
No,
bringing
no,
it
no,
up.
no, listen, right now, I'm gonna make it. MPO has beautiful microphones that lay on the desk, and you can sit in any position and you're heard.
There you go.
So we need to get this fixed.
The Empire's striking back here, folks.
There's my number 2 priority.
Fred, you're the only one with the problem.
Yeah. But you'd have less of a problem there.
Well, we love you, buddy.
Okay. No, all I'm saying is transparency it's something you're not gonna spend a lot of money on. It's more things that the staff does and city council does. So but it's real important,
Get Mike's number 2.
especially in the minds of the public.
Yeah.
Number 2 is mine, Parks is my number 2.
I have a DRGR protection.
DRGR number 2 for me.
Parks, number 2.
I had Parks number 2 just because of the beach access
Yeah,
and stuff
big
like that,
agree.
moving forward with that.
Transparency.
And this is also not hard in a way, but let's face it,
Yeah.
these are all important.
Right.
But here we are. We're making priorities.
What would you count, Carl?
I think that's,
Well, you kind of went through that pretty quickly,
Three.
but I came up with 2 transparencies, 2 DRGRs,
Three parts.
and 3
parks.
parks. Does that add up?
3 parts.
Right.
Yep.
Ooh,
How can that be? That's more than,
Yep.
That's 7.
no, that's 7.
you said 2,
Okay.
well, whatever you have is
Two,
fine.
two.
Whatever you have is
1,
fine.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. So I've got 2 DRGRs, 2 transparencies, 3 parks.
Yep.
Yeah, that's 7.
Okay,
Okay.
so it's.
So it sounds like it's parks.
Parks.
Okay.
Okay.
But I agree. Somebody made the comment that on the parks, the priority ought to be on the beach access
Right.
and improving maybe additional parks down there.
Yeah, Big
Which
Hickory.
is what's here.
Which is already in the program.
Right.
Yeah.
Already discussed,
Right.
correct.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's number 2.
And then number 3, Greg, you want to start with number 3?
Number 3 is my DRGR.
Okay.
So
If we didn't get DRGR at number 2, do we have to vote for it for number 3? Go ahead.
I'm downtown revitalization.
Okay.
I'm DRGR.
I'm DRGR.
Oh, sorry, Pete.
No, go ahead. Mike?
Well,
You're
you
number
guys-
three-
you
you're
guys had
number 3?
DRGR for number 2, though.
Well, that's what
What
I'm
was
saying.
We
number
lost.
3?
Now we're
We
coming
lost.
back. Now we're
Yeah,
coming
I
back.
I thought we were doing tick marks.
We're going again.
I thought we were doing tick marks.
had to
see
get-
what
they had to
lines
take
it
parks.
up. Yeah, right.
Okay, so,
I know, but like if DRGR is our number 3 and it was your number 2, you add up the tick marks to find out what's actually on top.
Ooh, I like that.
Getting
Now we're getting to your tick marks.
which,
I think we should go down. I did all 9, so I think we should just go down the
oh,
list.
you did
and-
all of yours? Oh, I didn't do.
But I mean, if you just want to do the top 3, because that way we can figure out.
What we wanted to do.
We were gonna
was-
do the top
then you
3,
just
right?
do the tick marks
Carl's
to figure
idea
out
was-
Whatever
what's on
council
top.
wants to do.
Top 3.
Because otherwise, I'm thinking we need to come up with a ballot and then you
Yeah.
Exactly.
we're going to have a grading Rubik's over here that's really.
I
gonna
think
be-
Carl's,
Exactly.
I think Carl suggested do the top 3 and the rest will work.
That's
So,
right.
so what was everybody's original 3 besides switching to DRGR, which you
Well,
guys had as 2?
transportation was number 1, that was the majority.
Yeah.
And number 2, parks, that was the majority. The majority.
Three.
Well,
Three.
no, but I mean everybody's individual number 3. What was everybody's individual number 2?
I had downtown revitalization in one
I
of
did too.
those. Because I think most of the, well, DRGR, I think parks we're gonna do, because we already have things going there. And I think some of these other things, like the financial, we're gonna have to do that. It's all integrated with everything else we have to do, and transparency is just, anyway. So we have to pick number 3. Yeah. How many?
And Amy, let's just go through it again. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is downtown revitalization.
DRGR. Downtown.
DRGR.
DRGR.
They got it.
Oh, you're doing 2. You said 3.
This is our third. Our third.
Third.
Our
Still
third.
look- I'm still looking for districts 5 and 6 on
Uh,
this.
Yeah.
Downtown.
The DRGR.
No,
but-
the DRGR was.
yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Okay,
So you're good,
DRGR.
you're good, Carl, right? That's what you need?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that the rest of these aren't important. We can continue to work on them as we fit in time.
What do we do? Parks.
Okay.
We did transportation, parks, and DRG.
Yes.
Is that what
So-
we did? Okay.
Oh, let me officially announce that. So it's transportation, number 1.
Yeah.
Okay, parks, number 2, and what that means. And then DRGR protection.
Okay.
Okay, it's number 3.
Not that we're not doing the rest.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
All right? Those are
Okay,
the
so
top
then
3.
we're almost done. We're on to the list of workshops, which is here somewhere.
It's city council matters.
So Carl, why don't you kind of take the lead here? You're looking for direction as to,
Yes, sir, thank you. So, of course, after that whole vote thing, this is a little scary. So, a significant number of the items that were on the original list, as Councilmember O'Flynn indicated, were public presentations by staff or discussions, workshop discussions, workshops from staff, those kinds of things. And we would like to have some prioritization of those areas, and maybe not individual ones, but maybe what I might suggest is that based upon the prioritization you just made, we could group these and just do, now, assuming that, so for example, if transportation, anything that has to do with transportation on this list, we could assume council wants to hear about first. And then parks and what that means, all right? And then the DRGR. We also know downtown's a big deal as well. So we could certainly group all of those downtowns things together. If there's anything else as a larger group or a higher priority that the council would like to hear about at future workshops, we would like to know that. But if I go by your prioritization, are you comfortable with that?
The only suggestion, sorry, Amy.
I'd like to just add like water, I call it water quality. You know, there's, we're going to address some of that when we go over the capital improvement plan, but there's so much task work that's already been done to make us help the council to understand all the issues there with flow-throughs and, you know, pollution, and so I would like to have kind of a water quality workshop where we look at some of these past reports and discuss it. And we're going to have to address it with the capital improvement because there's a number of those that are there.
Can I make 2 points here? Number one, because the downtown project is for real and it's going now, that ought to be one of the workshops that's sooner, even though it wasn't in that top 3 priority.
Yeah, I agree.
Number two, and only, I was going to wait till tomorrow to bring this up, but I'll bring it up today. I know that the mayor, Amy, and I were at that sustainability conference. I believe I saw Mike there, but we had an most important thing about that workshop, besides finding out why Albertson's store is still empty, which is because the landlord is still getting paid rent for it. Well, I mean, that really answers a lot of questions. But there was a state representative, Kristen Jacobs, that came up and introduced herself to the mayor and I, and she happens to be on the appropriations committee, but became real obvious that she knows all kind of things about water. And keen into what Amy said, what came out of, first of all, her background is she was 16 years county commissioner, Broward County. They've done things there that we are just now talking about here. One of the things that she and that commission did was organize within the county and surrounding areas a deal where all the cities got together and they worked collectively on improving water quality, water conservation, reducing pollution. They now do what really we should hopefully someday be doing, which is look for the point source of pollution rather than monitor the water quality in the river or the bay and all that. Long story short, the mayor asked her for some help on another unrelated matter, although it does relate to this. And I said, well, you know, would you come and speak to us? And then I said, got a better idea with all your knowledge. Would you help us organize a one-day, you can call it a workshop, a seminar on water, everything from water conservation, water quality, reducing, eliminating pollution, how the economics of water quality and water and eliminating pollution come into play, land use planning and all that. She said yes, and I said, I think this is something I'm supposed to focus on. I've been told to focus. And so I've already talked to her. She's absolutely go. I've made a preliminary contact with Florida Gulf Coast, and they are too. So one of the things that we can do, if council is in agreement, is that we could have this conference like in the late fall before the legislative session takes up so that she can participate. She already has agreed to bring in experts to help us. Amy could like chair a breakout or a session on the economics of all this. O'Flynn, or O'Flynn and I could do the land use planning and its effects, the mayor on other issues. There's something, probably biking somehow fits in it. We can get Greg to figure out some way that where life safety, public safety, what its impact is on water. We can figure out something for Stephen on veterans or whatever. Everybody's going to be involved in it.
Don't you like how we
We'll
assign?
invite, it will be county-wide and beyond. And that's what they did, and it was very, so unless somebody says no, that's kind of my extra strategic plan for the,
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and I'm not saying no at all. Would you want to do it here? Would you want to do it at Florida Gulf Coast? Where would you?
those are details to be
Yeah.
worked out. Florida Gulf Coast would do it if we want them to. I mean, it would offer facilities, yes.
Right.
So it's, and
We
it
could do
would
it
be
at
a
the
great,
Hyatt.
be a great thing. You'd have everybody from all around invited as well, from Collier and all that. Anybody has anything to do with water.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, look at some costs too, of course.
Yeah, cost should be fairly minimal, you know.
That would be my thought. Let's keep the cost down. Great,
Yeah.
great, great. Let's keep the cost down.
Yeah. Well, you heard me speak it.
Well, you've taken it 10 steps beyond that. That's
Oh, no,
great
probably
already. That's good.
15.
15. No, that's good. That's good, Fred.
Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Yes.
So it sounds like the council's interested in pursuing this. Is there an expectation staff's going to be doing logistics on this? Because
Not
you
for-
need to
not
talk.
for me.
You need to talk about a facility. You
Right.
got to talk about who's doing lunch. You know, there's a
Right.
lot of logistics involved, and I'd be interested in how that's going to be approached.
Right, and I think part of that would be what you call details to be worked out, but I think Florida Gulf Coast, from what I gathered, would really be interested because water may very likely be one of their things that's in their strategic plan as well. But they are definitely putting a big emphasis on water. They've got capabilities, and so I would say that they would probably help us a lot on this as well. So, but Carl, I think, give me at least 2 or 3 weeks and I can give you a more intelligent answer.
And I would just think logistically, I don't know, for them to host, it probably makes sense.
Yeah.
In terms of breakout.
Could
you know,
very
just
well, it could
space.
very well be,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm. It's certainly less expensive than other places we'd have to rent or make a deal with and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then food, you know, we can figure that out.
They have
Get a
food
sponsor.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
everybody
Yeah,
can
yeah.
buy their own food there.
Right.
They have a cafeteria thing.
Right.
Right.
Carl, one last,
Very, very
Put it in the
good.
cafeteria.
Carl, one last observation on your previous
Costco.
question.
Yes, sir.
Which is, to the extent to which there are workshops that relate to finance, you might want to think about moving some of them up as it relates to getting the input you and Ann need with respect to the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do that?
Yep. Okay, so now we have transportation, parks, DRGR, downtown, water quality, finance / budget. Is it council's desire that we, because we are going to need some direction for putting the budget together, would council be all right if we went with finance and budget first, then downtown, or vice versa, and then let the rest of them fall in place behind that?
Well, how soon, I guess my question is McMahon and them are coming back here soon. So would transportation go before that and do, let's say, finance right before we do the budgeting process? Would that work? I don't know about Ann or Matt.
Where is Ann? Ann, could you come up?
Can I make a
And
point
Matt,
while
you're
he's
welcome.
walking
Yeah,
up?
go ahead, Fred.
Because Old Downtown revitalization is underway, there are decisions that need to be made sooner rather than later. I would say that should be your first one, followed by the budget thing, for whatever.
Like what decision? I'm just trying to figure it out because the way I look at it, we've got a contract signed
Yeah.
with Wright that says we're doing X, Y, and Z. Now, if there's a change order,
No, the
whether
bridge,
it's
the bridge is floating up in the air, and it's gonna take a long time to do it once they do it. And you're trying to get it done. When you have a project of its magnitude underway, putting off a decision is only gonna cause you
Well,
trouble or money, yeah.
And from what I heard earlier, and maybe the presentation should be sooner than later, from the way I heard it from Director Feeney and from the city manager is that Wright Construction is trying to, I don't want to say it wrong, cut corners to save us some money so that added cost will not be as great as anticipated.
Go ahead, Matt, dive in, thanks.
Matt Feeney, for the record, Public Works Director. Councilman, your cut corners is a term I
I know
would
it's not a good.
use.
I know it's not a good term.
Minimize expenses.
Minimize expenses. Yes.
Efficiency.
They've really the same process has happened with the bridge that's happened with the East Terry Street roundabout. We have taken, as Carl mentioned, we've taken a very detailed look at how to meet the project goal, the vision, but yet mitigate the cost to the minimal possible. And to that end, last week, they're working on the legal descriptions right now, but last week I received really the final recommended design that analyzed traffic flow based on existing counts we took during the project, and accounted for some other physical features on the existing property so that we really mitigated the roundabout. And we're in a position to talk to City Council about the ramifications of that, or will be in a position here probably by the end of May. In addition, timing is everything. The bridge, Wright Construction is evaluating concepts, as Councilman Forbes has alluded to, a little different, but the similar idea, and expect to have that same information available around the end of May as well. And so both of those, I would say, are relational, because I believe we're going to have a situation where there's a cost savings, and we'll be able to consider a bridge back into the project, as we talked about, and to be able to talk about the potential liabilities with the roundabout and what those impacts will be on those properties. So it seems like bringing those two at the same time really makes sense, and that timing is really the end of May. There's a third outlier that's been talked about that we've been working very hard to get the final information from, and that is the undergrounding of the electric. Carl mentioned it as a budgetary number of $1.5 million that's outside of this project. It's within the overarching budget. FP&L has worked up their design. We have the designs of Comcast and CenturyLink. We have the information from them for council to consider. What we don't have is the agreements from Florida Power and Light that show one of two approaches. One is where they would construct the remaining infrastructure from laying the conduit in the ground to pulling the wire, which in their own description is a fairly expensive alternative. The other is where we would dig the ditch and they provide the conduit and do the electrical work to connect it. And the indication has been that there'll be a savings from that $1.5 million, and I believe there will be, which will be beneficial to the project. I am waiting on an agreement from them. Carl met with their economic development director. We've been pushing hard for some time, and as soon as we have that piece, that really is the third piece to what the savings are, or what the available dollars are to apply to bridge improvements and land improvements with the roundabout. So I believe we'll be in a position to answer those questions for sure with the bridge and the roundabout by the end of May. FP&L, we've kept the heat on, and I hope to have that answer. They've assured me that we will in the upcoming weeks, but FP&L has been a little slow to provide that information. They've developed the final design. Really what they owe us is a cost estimate and an agreement for council to consider.
Are they going in a place, where would the ditch be? Would it not be where the road, where would it be?
It's on the western half of US 41.
Old 41, yeah.
Right. I apologize.
Right.
Yes, sir. It's on the western half of Old 41, and it's the primary reason. What we've been able to do is through the electrical contractor, we've been able to get some of the conduit to make critical crossings where you see the poured concrete intersections, right, the roundabout at Pennsylvania. And that conduit is proprietary to FP&L. It has a marking on it so that you know it's underground electric. The availability of the remaining conduit really comes with the agreement that City Council would enter into. And so that's the primary reason when you look at the project, when you look at the western half in front of Councilman Gibson's businesses, that you see there's not a sidewalk there because that's where the ditch would be.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And could you come up and talk about timing for a budget/financial workshop?
Sure. On the budget, Ann Wright, Finance Director, I'm sorry. On the budget, that's really just a quick discussion from a standpoint of making sure that when we do the budget workshop in July, that we do present the information in a format that's going to be more effective for council to receive. And so that's a discussion where we can present some ideas and make sure that the council is in agreement with how we approach that. Zero-based budgeting, specifically want to get an understanding of how much detail the council is interested in seeing on how we're building our budgets. So that type of guidance. So that's a real quick one. A number of the other items do have a lot of impact relating to financial aspects and analysis of our debt, the downtown project and all of that. And they can be built into other presentations as we go along, but the most time critical at this point would be that understanding of what staff needs to be working towards to provide to council for that first meeting when we meet on July 13th.
And does it make sense, and here again, master the obvious in my mind, but we've made our priorities. Should we tie that in with our budget that starts at 0 and tie that into maybe get some arms around what our priorities are going to cost?
Well, yes.
And to me, that's obvious, but I just want to make sure and have that discussion that that's obvious with everybody else.
Yeah,
It's clear to us.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
It's clear to staff. I mean, we take the priorities that the council comes up with, and then we incorporate those into the city manager's proposed budget, and then council can rework it as you see fit.
Yeah, and along that lines, there are other items here that in my mind could relate to the budget. So, for example, and the question is, should we be having a workshop on that before July? Things like the nitrogen reduction obligations. What's the play? Is there a play in that? What is there, in that? In terms of timing, not whether we do it. Things like that, and the debt. Could we, stagger that? We chatted a little about this yesterday, Ann, but, can we move out some of the amortization of that debt? And then I was also thinking the other day about something Greg said at the last meeting, which is in the fire district, they're building up, they have over time built up reserves. They haven't incurred debt. They've built up reserves for whatever their priorities are. Whatever man comes in, it's going to be a significant amount of money. Obviously, we're hoping to partner with Lee and FDOT with respect to it. It's not going to be all ours. But, to me, it would be good, I would think, to be able to give Ann some guidance ahead, and Carl, you, ahead of preparing the budget with respect to those concepts, right?
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
In addition, we've also talked about impact fees and what to do about them. We've talked about the elasticity of the revenue side of the budget, and what opportunities there may be there, even though the council may not go for any of those. We don't, at least we can discuss them.
Right.
So there are opportunities, I think, to fill up a budget workshop just to give us some guidance on some important points we need to know before we actually start the hard preparation of the budget.
That's what I'm suggesting.
So that we're kind of lined up, so July 13 hopefully won't be painful. Okay.
Okay, so, it's...
And, I had mentioned earlier, you pass a budget, but then you also have on deck in year 2 and on double deck in year 3. How many of those are coming to roost off the top of your head? Or I guess I would say let's look at things that are now upon us, because last year's budget, they were a year out, but they're now upon us. Yeah. So I think we need to look at that. Does this council share that view of what was, on deck last year that's now here?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Well, that's going to happen tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
All right, tomorrow you're having a CIP workshop. And we've gone through, just so you understand a little bit about tomorrow, is that we've gone through the CIP list with the directors, and we basically, without direction, we kind of picked two major criteria by which it should be measured. Number one, is the project safety related? All right, we need to be concerned about keeping our facilities safe. And then number two, as we discussed previously, whether or not there was a governmental mandate requiring us to do something for some reason.
Okay.
So those items were kept in the CIP budget, and then the direction was the rest of them would be swept out, all right, for your review as to whether or not you want to proceed. Now, obviously, you can still look at the ones that were left in, but just want to let you know that there are, as Councilmember Forbes has already indicated, there are significant amounts of money that the council would have available to reallocate to projects. And so that's some of what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. What is tomorrow? Tomorrow.
4 o'clock.
Tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Right.
Okay. Is that
Yeah,
everyone
no,
comfortable with that?
we've
That
got so
sounds
many
great.
workshops, like Fred says. I was going to hold this till tomorrow, but we're all here, so.
No, that's great.
Yeah. That's great. No, that's great. That's perfect.
All right. Anything else? Okay. So what's the decision? So are we looking
Oh,
at,
that.
tomorrow we're doing CIP. So you'll have a better feel for large chunks of money that you might be able to reallocate. Then we've been talking about finance budget. We've also been talking about the downtown, which also may have some budgetary implications. Matt's not going to be ready on downtown, as he indicated, till the end of May. Matt, do you think we could possibly schedule this as tight as June 1st?
I think anything's possible.
Nice answer, nice.
Yeah. No, one thing, the request to bring the roundabout Dundee, as we call him, Mr. Walworth, to bring him to the meeting. I do need to check and find availability. I would like to have at least some of the project managers from Wright Construction, the senior one, Mr. Powell, here to talk about some of the details. And so I think we can certainly shoot for June 1st, but I've got some scheduling and availability things that I need to work out to make sure we can bring the right folks for City Council to talk to.
So, given that, would council feel comfortable that we do a finance budget workshop on May 18th? And that we look to schedule the downtown workshop for June the 1st? And we'll do as much as we can on downtown. If we can't get the right speaker, then we can also bring that person in a little bit. We can also bring him into a council meeting as well, if we need to. So,
Makes sense to me.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, to me, yes. Just kind of nodding my head.
I just wanted to ask Matt one question. You made a comment that something about that the roundabouts and all that were done from the traffic studies. And I'm not looking for the answer today, but would you make sure that when they come in to talk to us, that they tell us is what's going to be the limiting factor on how much traffic can go down Old 41? Is it going to be the roundabouts, or is it going to be the road? And where does that fall if we have more traffic than we had before we did all this renovation? Because I would imagine most of the merchants are hoping there's more traffic and more of it stops at their store, obviously. But
I will absolutely make sure. That sounds like a question for Mr.
oh yeah,
Walworth.
but it's not a bad question. All right.
okay, so tomorrow's CIP, May 18th, finance budget, and then downtown to the extent that we can do it for the workshop on June the 1st. Council comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sound good,
Okay,
everybody?
very good, thank you.
Just one more question. Some of these other things that we haven't focused on, I assume that we as individual council people could have conferences with the staff to see what is going along, like transparency, we could make suggestions and interact in that way.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But we do want to avoid council members coming in and working on individual projects with the staff
Right.
when we need them working on other things. So we just ask that council be sensitive to that. But again, we are available to council for questions and answers and however we can help. Okay?
So Carl, the takeaway here is we have this one-pager that's
Yes,
going to
sir.
be your cover sheet or something like that, right? On what is, if you follow the format from last time, a kind of perk chart, strategic action plan register, which would have behind it all the various items that were on here, probably excluding the workshops, right? Or
Here you
yeah,
go. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So that works.
Yep.
Yeah. The only other point I would make is, obviously, you saw this quickly, the one-pager, so if anyone had any comments on them, probably filter them to Carl.
And by the way, I want to publicly thank Councilmember O'Flynn for all his work on this. When you take a look at this, the vast majority of this work, other than the Excel work done by Ann, was done by Peter, and it's a very different process than we see before, because typically, you have the meetings up front with the council members, and then the staff spends a lot of time doing the follow-up work. What you've seen here is a lot of the work has been done up front, so council actually had something to chew on today. And then, it'll ease up on the back end obviously, the work needs to be done.
Right.
But as far as the work on this process, it's going to ease up on the back end, because it's been done up front. So thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, and Carl, the feeling's mutual. Working with you and staff has been fabulous on this, so thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Mayor,
I was going to
think
say,
that's all we
any
have.
other thoughts, discussions? Anybody from the public at this point want to say anything? Marty?
The thing I was going to say is the financial.
Come on up, Marty.
I'd be up here tonight.
Tune in, Fred.
When you were ranking everything, I think your constituents would agree that the finances would be the first thing that you all need to put first on your list always, because without that, the rest of it is kind of like pie in the sky, and most people are concerned about what their city's spending. That's what I was just saying. I heard Peter O'Flynn said that he recommended it first, and then Mr. Schwing said that it's something that will be done on a regular basis because of the budget. But I think that's a very, very important subject to most of your constituents.
Yep. No, absolutely, and you'll see in the budget process, I think you'll see it's important to us too, but absolutely. Other thoughts? Peter?
No, I'm good.
Fred?
No, I've said it all.
You've said it all. Mike? Steve?
Good.
Greg?
Everything's good.
Amy?
Good job.
Good job.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything
Thank you,
else,
council.
anybody?
Appreciate it.
Audrey, okay, great, thanks. I guess we are, workshop is adjourned. There we go, all right.
11:28.
Oh, my God.